Hey everybody, and welcome to this, my third of 3 videos on the Nikon D5000. In the first video, we talked about what all the stuff was. In the second, we talked about how to use it. In this video, we're going to go through all of these different menus and talk about what they are. If you see along this side, there are different symbols. Playback, shooting, custom settings, setup, retouch, and recent. That's what those symbols mean. I'm going to put a link in the description to each of these different section headings. So if there's something in one of those menus you need to look at, click on the timestamp on your desktop or advance to it on your phone to get to that part of the video, and you'll get to where you need to be a little bit more quickly. Okay, playback menu. Delete deletes images based on preset criteria. So you can select them, you can select every image from a date, or you can select all of the images and have them all be deleted. Yes, let's delete them all. Done. Okay, it's fine. I formatted this card this morning anyway. Playback folder. This is the name of your playback folder, D5000. Display mode, highlights, RGB histogram, or data. So when you play back, you can hit your information button, and these, if you check them, are different things that will be displayed when you play back your images. Just a matter of whether or not you want to see data when you hit playback. Image review, on or off, and this is your instant image playback. Rotate all on or rotate tall images on or off. So if you have a portrait orientation image, will it be displayed sideways or upright if you hold the camera in landscape orientation? To have all of your images display upright, if you hold it in landscape like this, leave it to on. Slideshow, if there were any images on the SD card, would play a slideshow. And print set would allow you to print the images on your SD card. Shooting menu. Scene mode. This is not available with RAW only shooting. This camera is set to RAW only, so that's not available. If you'll remember the scene mode setting on the top of the dial, right here. There we go, scene. What we're doing now, what you would set up here would be accessed by switching that to scene mode. Basically what this does is if you enter it, you can set up some custom settings for your JPEGs, contrast, sharpness, color saturation, things like that. And then setting to scene mode would access those presets that you make here to apply them to the JPEGs you take while in scene mode. Set picture control. If you want to read more about this, go to manual page 107, and it shows what each of these different things are going to be for. In general, your best bet's going to be setting it to standard or neutral and doing any of the additional toning that you want to do in post. You'll get better results because whatever even free downloadable software you're using for image editing today or in the future is better than what this camera's computer is capable of. Managing picture control allows you to add different picture controls to images. As with the above setting, this is best left alone as your computer is going to do a better job of editing images than this camera's computer can. Image quality lets you set how files are saved. RAW file, JPEG, or both at the same time. So NEF RAW plus JPEG, fine, normal, or basic. NEF RAW only, JPEG, fine, normal, or basic. You cannot control the JPEG size, only the compression. So with the NEF files, Windows 10 and I would assume later will be able to display thumbnails of them, so there's no benefit to shooting an NEF plus a JPEG. If you're going to be editing these on your computer, your best bet's just to shoot in RAW only. image size, actually, I take that back, is where you can adjust the image size of your JPEGs. So you can see the pixel sizes here for large, medium, and small JPEGs. If you really want to maximize your SD card, you could go small JPEGs in coarse, or not coarse, whatever the term is, basic. And that would cram the most images onto your SD card. They wouldn't be big, but they'd be plentiful. White balance, we saw this in video 2 a little bit, but these are your different white balance settings, and this is how you would access them through the menu system. ISO sensitivity, we saw how to access this through the quick menu in video 2. This is how you would get there in the menu system setting. So auto control, you can allow automatic ISO to be on or off. Manual sensitivity, you can adjust your manual sensitivity here. Minimum shutter speed, you can adjust the minimum shutter speed you are willing to let the camera do. So if you're shooting an 18-55, like I am right now, you could set your minimum shutter speed to 1/50th, and your camera is not going to do a shutter speed, I believe, faster than that. Should be slower. That word minimum is such a weird word. Is it the minimum speed? Or pretty sure that this means you cannot shoot anything slower than that. That's what I'm going to hope anyway. Active D lighting is active dynamic lighting. That's what ADL stands for. Basically, it's in-camera HDR, like we talked about in video 2. And your best bet is to turn it to off and shoot in RAW, and you'll get more image editability out of your images that way. Auto distortion control is going to control or correct lens distortion with your D and G lenses only. It will not, however, work with perspective control or fisheye lenses. And basically what this does is with a D and G lens or G lens, the camera has profiles built into the memory for where the images distort. And what will happen is that the camera will then apply those profiles to warp the images slightly, very, very slightly. We're talking a matter of pixels in places, to eliminate barrel and pincushion distortion. I leave it to off because if I want to fix that, I want to do that on a computer that's more powerful than the one this camera has. Although if you set it to on, you do get the profiles that Nikon put into this camera for the lenses that were available at the time this camera was sold. Color space is going to be sRGB or Adobe. Unless you're super into the Adobe ecosystem, just leave this at S. It's compatible with everything. Long exposure noise reduction reduces your noise on long exposure. High ISO noise reduction does the same for high ISO images. Leave these both to off. What you can do with your computer today with any downloadable free or paid photo editing software is better than what this camera's computer can do. And then active folder lets you pick a different folder, create it, rename it, or delete folders. Movie settings. This allows you to adjust your settings for movies if you're going to record them. 1280 by 720, 640 by 424, or a gigantic 320 by 216. This tells you a lot about when this camera was made and whether or not you want to record sound. Interval timer shooting is discussed on page 76 of the camera's manual. So if you want more detail on that, go into the camera manual on page 76. In short, this lets you take photos at a set interval for things like time lapses or star trail images. I would show you this, but some settings on this camera have to be on in order for this to work. And I haven't figured out what I don't have set correctly for this to work. I don't know why this won't illuminate. It should. This option is not available with current settings, but it doesn't tell me which ones are preventing it. So I can't show it to you. Okay, custom settings menu. So we're going to start off with reset custom settings. Yes, let's do that. That way we can see what the factory default is. So to reset it, you just go in there, hit yes. Autofocus area allows you to pick the active autofocus points between single, multiple, and smaller area. All points 3D. Oh, come on, really? So this lets you pick between various autofocus point settings. We saw this largely in video 2 in the quick access menu. Built-in autofocus assist illumination. This is on or off, and this is whether or not you want the autofocus light to activate on the front of the camera. This is good for general shooting, not great for things like performances, plays, and so forth. Why does it keep doing this? Okay. Live view autofocus. Now everything in this, by the way, has to do with autofocus. Everything in the A setting, that is. So live view, these are your different live view autofocuses. Face priority, wide area, normal area, or subject tracking. Face priority will focus on faces. Wide area casts the widest net possible for autofocus tracking. Normal area is the standard default normal setting, more of a centralized area. And subject tracking is things that are moving will be the autofocus will focus on. Rangefinder is going to be best understood by reading manual page 156. In essence, this provides a guide to when something is in focus or if focus is in front or behind the subject. Next is B, and that is going to be exposure. So everything here, this B1, has to do with exposure, and this is exposure value steps. So this 1/3 or 1/2. With older cameras like this, 1/3 is preferable because it will give you more accuracy in your raw images, and it will get them closer to being accurate. You're not going to have as much raw image editing ability with a camera this old as you would with a new one. C has to do with, all of these different C1s have to do with timers and auto exposure locking. So C1 is your shutter release button auto exposure lock on or off. On means that auto exposure locks when the autofocus is locked via the shutter release being pressed halfway. Off means that auto exposure does not lock except with the AEL button right here. So personal preference on this, which one you want to do, off or on. Auto off timers, short, normal, long, or custom. So this is basically how long things stay on and turn off. Playback menu, playback and menu, 12 seconds. That explains why everything's turning off so quickly all of a sudden. Set that to 10 minutes. Image review, this is instant playback, whether you want it to be short or long. And auto metering, this is how long the meter stays on after you activate it. C3 is your self timer, and this lets you set your self timer length. Delay 2, 5, 10, or 20 seconds. Number of shots, how many shots 1 through 9 will be taken after you activate the self timer. And I believe it counts down the self timer between shots as well. C4 is remote on duration. And this is how long the camera will wait for a signal from a remote control. If you don't use the remote control within that timeline, it will cancel quick response mode. So this is just a matter of personal preference. Honestly, 15 minutes, if you're waiting more than 15 minutes to use a remote control, shame on you anyway. No, I don't know. Just whatever you want to set it at is fine. Beep, high, low, or off. It's like dance music here now. Okay, I'm just going to leave this to off. We're now into, by the way, the D settings, which are shooting and display. D2 is viewfinder grid display on or off. This will allow you to turn on the optional grid in the viewfinder if you want it, and that's good for composition assistance. ISO display, do you want your ISO to display yes or no in the viewfinder? Yes, we do. File numbering sequence, do we want this to display or not? Not really. Do we want to reset the file numbering? Yeah, maybe we do, maybe not. Okay. Exposure delay mode causes a delay between the shutter release and image capture to avoid mirror shake. On is good for when you have the camera on a tripod, especially for macro and night photos. Otherwise, leave this to off. D6 is date imprint, and some setting that I would need to have on is not on. And D7 is live view display options, and this shows what info, this is the info you can have on during live view. Your indicators, come on. Show indicators, hide indicators, framing grid, and show shooting info. Framing grid you definitely want to have on. The rest of this is basically just a matter of personal preference for what kind of data you want to have with your live view. E is your bracketing and flash menu options. There are two of them here. E1 is flash control for the built-in flash, and it selects, let's see, TTL or manual. So TTL mode means that when you have the built-in flash, the camera is going to use the meter reading to control the flash output. Manual means that with the built-in flash, which is this guy right here, of course, on top of the prism, you are going to set your own flash settings, and the camera will use those regardless of whether or not the image will turn out. I like manual flash settings for off-camera flashes, but not for the on-camera flash. So, but matter of personal preference and your comfort level with using flashes. Auto bracketing set, you have here, this lets you pick what is bracketed, exposure value, white balance, or active D lighting, and it only works in your P, A, S, and M modes. So auto exposure bracketing, white balance bracketing, or HDR light bracketing. The F ones are your control, your custom settings controls here. And there are 5 of these. So F1 assigns the function button its functions. So basically, the function button was up here on the side of the camera next to the lens mount. And you just pick which one of these you want to have be activated when you push the function button. Totally a matter of personal preference and how you use the camera, which one of these you select. Assisting auto exposure lock and auto focus lock. With this one, the button has 4 options for how the button works. With option 1 here, auto exposure and auto focus lock, and this is the button here that we're talking about, the AEL AFL button. That button locks the focus and exposure when it is pressed. With option 2, it only locks the exposure. With option 3, it only locks focus. And with option 4, it locks the auto exposure, but you have to hold it. And with option 5, it locks or unlocks your autofocus. The second to last one is a hold. The rest of these are toggles. Reverse dial rotation off or on. This is whether you're used to this dial being turned one way or the other for adjusting settings. Personal preference and what you expect the dial to do. No memory card, lock or enable. So basically with this one, if you have no memory card in the camera with release lock, it will not take a picture. So if you want to be able to tell really quickly whether or not there's a memory card, turn it on, try to take a picture, no memory card. This enables the release to the camera to, quote, big air quotes, take a picture without a memory card. It won't save it, but it'll go through the motions. F5 is reverse indicators, and what this does is reverses your metering. So basically, with this one, overexposure is on the left, under is on the right. Underexposure is on the left, overexposure is on the right. It's just a matter of personal preference which way you're used to seeing that data. All right, setup menu. Format memory card. Formats the memory card. It does exactly what it says. LCD brightness. Adjusts the LCD brightness. There we go. Might make it a little bit easier for you to see now. So if you're outside shooting in full sun, you can jack up the LCD brightness. If you're inside in a dark space or shooting star trails at night, you can turn it all the way down. Info display format. And this affects how information is displayed on your main screen, and you can set different colors for the PASM or scene modes as a reminder of how your shooting is set up. So whether you want classic or graphic, blue, orange, or black, PASM mode, classic or graphic, blue, orange, or black. Basically, what you can do is, if you're shooting in PASM now, your screen will be blue. If you're shooting in auto modes, your screen will be orange, and that way you can just glance at the screen when you're not in the menu system to tell what you're shooting in. Let's take a look at what that looks like. Blue, orange. So as you adjust the mode dial here, it'll switch between orange and blue based on your shooting mode. Auto information display displays exposure information on the screen when the shutter button is pressed halfway. Auto scene modes. And this is when it is in these modes. So it's on or off whether or not you want to see exposure information when you have to press your shutter button. Info wraparound. Basically, if you remember in old video games, the world wraps, where you can keep going left and right in an endless circle, or up and down or whatever. Or it doesn't. You hit the end of the map and you stop. That's this. With on, the world wraps. With off, it doesn't. Cleaning the image sensor. What this will do is, if we hit clean at startup and shut down, we can now clean at startup, clean at shutdown, clean at startup and shutdown, or never. We want it to clean both times. We can also clean now, and it will do the ultrasonic cleaning thing and help get any dust off of it. Lock mirror up for cleaning. Press the shutter button there, and we've now locked up the mirror. You can maybe see. Here you can see that the sensor is accessible for cleaning. The way to clean the sensor on this camera is with a DSLR brush. You brush the sensor off with the sensor pointing towards the ground. That way any dust you release will fall away from the sensor. Then as soon as you're done, you hit off. That closes the mirror and the shutter. And then you put your lens back on. That's where we were. And that's how you can clean your sensor to remove dust from it. Video mode, NTSC or PAL, depending on which zone you live in. HDMI, this is your HDMI output setting. So if you're plugging the camera into your HDMI output, this lets you specify the format of the video going through the HDMI output. Time zone and date allow you to adjust the date and time zone. That's fine. Date format's fine. Daylight savings time is on. And there we go. So you can set your date and time, set the format it displays, and do that through here. Language, you can pick which language you would like to have the camera display in. There is quite a long list of languages. Image comments, image comment or attach comment. This lets you input image comments, and if you want to do this, manual pages 169 and 152 provide data and information on how to input comments. But basically, if you wanted to say things like, use this, cut out this background, things like that, you could put those in there to remind you later when you go back to edit the photos of what you were thinking when you took them. Auto image rotation, on or off. Do the images rotate on the screen when you play them back? Image dust off reference photo. What this does is this will take a reference photo of a plain white wall, and the camera will then look for dust on the image sensor with that reference photo, and it will remove the dust in subsequent photos that you use when you're shooting that day, or until you do that again. Now, one thing to note is that if you do that and then more dust is added, or you clean dust off of it, you won't have accurate data, and that could also affect how your images look. GPS lets you select what is recorded when a GPS unit is attached. And your firmware version displays the firmware version which you have installed. And I'm going to guess that this firmware has never been updated. I do not recall what the final firmware versions are for this camera. Retouch menu. This is only for images that you've already taken. So if you have no images on the SD card, like I don't have any images on the SD card right now, you cannot do anything with them. So this lets you do things like adjust your lighting, reduce red eye, crop, convert to monochrome, add filters, adjust your color balance, change your picture, make your picture smaller, or do image multiple exposures. Look, realistically, just skip this entire menu and do all of these things in post on your computer, where you're going to be able to get much better results. The Recent Settings menu allows you to access menu options that you've adjusted recently. And it displays them in the order that you've adjusted them most recently. You can see here, this is what we've done in reverse order. So if you have, say, 3 or 5 things that you do very frequently, they'll appear on this list at the top. Simply go into this menu item, find them, and you can get to them more quickly. And that's what that does. And that is it. That is everything on this, the Nikon D5000. A very capable camera. It's a few years old, but it still can take really nice photos. It's got a great feature set, very compact build. Apparently a Canon lens cap. Whew. Thank you for watching this video. Please give me a thumbs up. That lets me know that I'm on the right track producing content which is useful and helpful to you. If you have any questions or comments, please leave those in the comments section below. I'm pretty good about checking these every couple of days and answering questions. If you have any suggestions or ideas for future videos, and if I have the technical know-how and equipment, I'm more than happy to make those. One last thing. Thank you everyone for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. I gotta get up, Steinbeck. I have to turn off the camera.